What's up, guys? Welcome to another update video for The Bazaar. Today, we're going to be going over some of your questions that you had after watching our last gameplay video. Let's get to it. All right, Alex Wilt says, when you pick different characters on the character select screen, the camera should whisk over to a different part of the town background where the guy would be hanging out. Like the pig merchant should be by the tents and the pirate lady by the docks. I actually really like this idea. I'd love to do stuff like this. There's a chance it's out of scope for us right now. Like we can't get art assets that are that big done in time before we launch. Honestly, what you guys see in that video is just like a really rough sketch of just a piece of the homepage background art, and the actual image itself is massive. It's the single biggest piece of art we have in the game because it's naturally sized to fit widescreen resolutions. It's like 3,500 pixels wide or something like that. On top of that, it's going to be extremely high detail, more high detail than like card art, for example, and it'll be animated as the very final stage. So trust me, the background will look way better, but I don't think we can do like multiple drawings and switch between them because just the scope of that art piece is way bigger than it looks just in the video that you guys saw. But it is a good idea for sure. We do want to mess around with dynamic lighting too, which I think would be kind of cool. If we could have maybe, a few times of day have different lighting conditions for the homepage, depending on what time you open the client, for example. No promises on that, we're looking into it, but I like where your head's at.
Frank Powerful says, where's the interaction with my opponent? I want to sabotage him. And he provided some examples of ways that you could sabotage him. So we've talked a lot about interaction in our game, and we're unsure how much of it we want. When you're playing a 1v1 game, interacting with the opponent makes a lot of sense because hindering them directly makes you more successful. But when you have more than one opponent in a multiplayer lobby, for example, directly interacting with your opponent is a lot less healthy of a gameplay pattern. So we're not sure exactly how much interaction we want to have in our game. It depends a lot on how many players we have.
We also spent some time talking about the philosophy that we want to have with interactivity. The truth is we might talk about this a little bit more at length in a future update video, but for now I think it's worth asking the question, does interactivity actually make a game more fun? And I think that in a lot of cases, that's not the case. Even if I think about extremely interactive games like Magic, for example, Commander is more popular than every other format they have combined. And a big defining characteristic of Commander is that there's less destructive interaction compared to other formats. It's actually very frowned upon to play cards that destructively interact with your opponent's stuff and stop them from doing their game plan. In general, it wouldn't surprise me if the way of building a game with the most net fun is when you let every player do their cool thing, and then whoever's cool thing was stronger. And I think interactivity is just a game tool that people kind of shove into their game without asking if it actually makes the game more fun. And the reality is a lot of times interactivity just gets in the way of people doing the cool thing that they're trying to do. So, I know a lot of us are used to winning games through destructive interaction, and after 20,000 hours of playing Magic, I have come to have my own little sick appreciation for sadism and prison decks and things like that. But at the end of the day, I do wonder if it's something people actually want or if it's something people think they want. Battlegrounds, for example, is a game with almost zero interaction, and honestly, I think it's one of the better strategy games on the market right now. I think we all feel that way. So I think there's examples of successful PvP strategy games without interaction. I don't think it's a prerequisite to having a fun game. Scott Sendo says, hi Reynad, good work so far. How about cards that affect the turn timer and not just the card energy? So what Scott's talking about is the 30-second fight timer that we had in that build that we showed you. Like I said, that whole build was just a bunch of placeholder rules where we had our rough buy phase, combat phase system working. Everything outside of that is pretty much still in development and a very early test. So the 30-second fight time is definitely just a placeholder. In the final game, I think it'll just be fights to the death. And then that, as soon as you have fights to the death, then we can't really do mechanics where we shorten the fight for whatever reason. But also it has a lot of inherent benefits. For example, people won't have to do math anymore on how many times during a fight their item will get used and anything like that. You know, it's just going to be fight to the death. The faster your item activates, the better it is. Lana Walker says, I really hope you add voice lines for each merchant. I think it'd really help the atmosphere of the bazaar. Completely agree. We're actually talking a lot right now about how to do the sonic identity for each merchant, because so much of the game is going to be centered around those merchants. You know, that's kind of our main cast of characters. It's where you're going to be spending a lot of time as a player. So we're talking about doing, you know, everything from voice lines to potential little jingles for each of them, but we're still trying to figure out exactly how to do the sound design and how to do dynamic music and have it all come in and have it all just fit cohesively. So definitely a cool idea. Definitely planning on doing voice lines. We're just kind of in the middle of figuring out how it all fits together.
Phrase said the new direction is a little bit close to auto chess, but I still think it has good identity on its own. It's actually a pretty common thread that a lot of people brought up. They thought we had similarities to the auto battling genre. And we're not going to deny that there are a lot of things they've done well. If you want to innovate, you don't start from something way in the past, you start from whatever is current. And we think that the auto battling games are the current leading strategy games. We think that their round system where you buy and then fight helps players focus on the more fun part of the game, which is building up your strategy and collecting stuff rather than executing it. So we think that's a really positive thing that they've innovated on. Another thing is removing all the inputs from executing. We think that they cut all of the unfun targeting inputs so you can just focus on buying more. There's a lot of core traits to all the auto battling games that we're not taking, like a reroll button or units hitting each other, their combat system. We think that there's a lot of things to be improved upon in the genre, but we're not just going to avoid a couple core changes they've made if we think they're good ideas. We're going to take the best ideas from that genre, and then we're going to make further improvements on all the areas that they did poorly. There's a lot of comments that were pretty dismissive, like, oh, this game is just another auto battler game, or they were upset that it's not a deck building game and it's more like an auto battling game. But I'm not sure they're very clear on what they want. An auto battling game is remarkably similar to a deck building game. Deck building games have you drawing from a deck, but most of the interesting decisions are still just picking what you're going to play with. It's the same as an auto battling game.
Al Barenza said that he's a little concerned about the gem system we had in that vertical slice that we showed. I just want to reassure you guys it's not actually going to be the win condition in the final game. It's just a placeholder win condition that we put there. All we knew is that we wanted buy phases and combat phases, and we wanted to kind of mitigate snowballing. So we just kind of put that in there as a placeholder system, but in the final game, it's definitely not going to be the actual win condition. I'd be surprised if we even ended up with like a gem counter anywhere on the UI.
Yeah, the gem counting's like just a little bit lame, a little bit abstract. Like, what is this weird gem resource that we added to the game just for a victory condition? It'd be cool if there wasn't an extra rule to have players win the game.
Yeah, victory points are lame.
On Discord, Wondrous Hippo says, we heard in previous video that the buying phase felt solid and you wanted to expand upon that. What are the areas which are still most in flux in terms of design and mechanics? We really like the concept of our buying phase and how players have to pick which thing they want to go to. We really want to expand upon that. So the core of it is solid, we just want it to have more depth. We want to have a big pool of things that you can see instead of just 3, like there was in the vertical slice. The core system of buying phases and battle phases is pretty much settled on. And in the battle phase, we're pretty settled on it being real time. But there are some mechanics that we're not 100% sure we want to keep. Those are things like the energy cost system. There might be a simpler way to do it. Maybe durability should be in the game in some way, or maybe items should break permanently in some way. These are the kind of mechanical questions we're asking, but the core rules of these rounds is pretty much settled on. The victory condition of the game, how you win the whole thing, and also the income system are 2 areas that are really underdeveloped. Our economy's pretty messed up and the victory condition's lame. We think that those are 2 areas that are very likely to change going forward.
Smash Junk suggests adding some visual indicators to make it easier to notice what upgrades are on an item, and we completely agree. We definitely want the upgrades that are applied to an item to be kind of seen at a surface level, and we have some pretty cool ideas on how to implement that, but that'll be a pretty big update that we'll probably make a dedicated video for in the future.
On Reddit, Slothalot brought up some concerns about the economy. He basically thinks that in some of the auto battling games like TFT, there's a lot of focus on building up your money and the income that players have, and it takes away from the focus of like the fighting and the building your team. And we completely agree. We think that we want players to focus on which items they want to pick and not building money throughout the start of the game. So we don't want to have too many economic tools at their disposal to expand their money base based on playing economically. In the vertical slice game that we played for you guys, the economy was pretty messed up. All the items had very low costs once you got to the late game because players had maybe 100 gold at their disposal, but the items still costed 2 to 10 money. It was like you could buy whatever you wanted. And the hero powers were all much more expensive and more accurately costed. We think that in the future, the economy will be a bit smaller. Players won't regularly sit at 40 or 50 money. The numbers will just be smaller than that. And we'll have a more consequential economy to which items you want to buy.
Water says they're concerned about energy costs, especially if they get to 0. We couldn't agree more. It was definitely the very first way that we noticed the game was easily breakable was just making some item go off every 0 seconds. Moving forward, when we modify energy costs, we're only going to be doing it by percentages. So instead of giving something a flat energy cost reduction, everything will be percentage based. It'll be like adjacent items charge 25% faster, for example.
We're sorry that you didn't get to see us reduce the yo-yo to go off every 0 seconds, but it wouldn't have been that exciting because in the build there's a minimum of about 1 second that the items take to go off because we realized just how many ways there are to make a 0 cost item go infinite. That was something that was in our build a while ago. Once you had a 0 cost item, it would just kill them. And it was not very good for testing.
Geronimo B says, could be interesting to have an estimate on how many times an item will trigger. I know it's simple, but I really don't like doing maths to know how many times an item is going to go off.
We really agree on this. We think that a 30-second fight, if you had to calculate how many times your item gets used in that window, just puts a lot of math into the game. And we think that the length of the fight should be a bit more open-ended. This is why we want to do fight to the death in the future, because if fights lasted anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute, then it would be a lot less math dependent on how many times your item would go off, and you'd just generally be focused on being faster as a character.
Andrey asked whether we've considered diminishing return for stun effects. I'm assuming you mean maybe something like dampening for healing in WoW Arena or stuff like that. Yeah, the truth is, look, stun looked really broken in the build that we showed you guys, only for a couple reasons, mostly just balance issues and the fact that we could do flat cooldown reductions. And also the numbers were just so wrong on everything. So basically, don't worry about it. Stunning will be it'll be impossible to like infinitely stun lock somebody in the final game, or at least almost impossible. And we've even made changes to our card design philosophy to kind of help accommodate that. So for example, at a base level, when we design cards that stun, we make sure that they're all brittle moving forward, so they're not like recursive effects out of the gate.
Marvin Coe says, really like every step of the process and the vertical slice looks great. The one thing that it needs is something unique for each class. From just the first glance, Pygmalion and Vanessa kind of looked the same. We agree. We think that the first implementations of the characters didn't feel different enough. The only thing that made them different was that Vanessa was a little bit more aggressive. But we think that there should be some mechanical differences. We want to partition the effects in our game, like maybe only some characters burn or poison. We want to make their play styles feel more different than they do. So we completely agree, and in the vertical slice you saw, it wasn't implemented very well yet.
Velocihorse says that he thinks it's weird that the brittle items come back. You know, honestly, I kind of agree with you, and we're actually testing some like permanent brittle mechanics right now. We'll see if they, like, consumables naturally make sense in the final build of the game. Hopefully they do. We'll talk about this more in an upcoming video, but I agree with you. There's a bit of like a thematic dissonance there, and we're looking at fixing it.
Tommy T says there's things we can improve on. He thinks that 30 seconds is too long for a fight, since you can calculate at the start who will win. So this is something that we've been concerned about pretty often. If you can completely calculate how the fight's going to play out, then it's not very interesting to watch, and maybe you could make a bot that can tell you how the fight's going to end. We think that you can mitigate this by having randomness, as some of the other games have done, or you can just have more concealed information, so you don't know what your opponent has until you get into the fight. I will say that in practice, even though we know exactly what the items do and what the upgrades do,
It's very hard to predict who's going to win a fight pretty often, even as misbalanced as the game is. In practice, it's not as big a concern as it might seem.
Seolan Man says, what if when you picked a merchant, there was like a little cutscene where you could see stuff behind them and it felt more immersive? Yeah, we actually, I talked about it a bit after we played the game in the last video, but that's definitely a priority. The whole top half of the game board is gonna look very different by the time we launch this game, and I think it'll feel a lot more like you're there face to face with a merchant rather than like hovering above like a little hero portrait icon, like a drone. We wanna make it feel like, you know, you're there and you're seeing like their tent and all the stuff around them. It'll be way more immersive and way prettier by the time it's a finished game. Raymond Lee says, what language is the game being coded in? Unity. On Twitter, Dougley McDoul says, can I suggest having weapon upgrade icons visible? It just makes it clearer at a glance. It looks amazing though. We completely agree. I want to make sure that when you upgrade a weapon, you'll be able to sort of tell at a surface level without needing to mouse over it, kind of what upgrades it has on it. We actually have some really cool ideas for how to do this, and we're going to make a dedicated video on this feature in the future. But honestly, I think it's one of the coolest things about the game, and I can't wait to show that to you guys. Antonio on Discord says, what types of player progression systems can we expect, such as achievements, ranking, MMR, battle passes, etc.? The plan right now is to definitely have MMR, and we're gonna make ranked like be a very prominent mode of the game. It's not an afterthought for us, you know, we're not like throwing on a leaderboard after the fact. Everyone working on the project's a competitive player, and honestly we think that, you know, having a good progression system, a good MMR system is one of the most important things to make the game replayable and retain players. So it's a high priority for us. We're looking into battle passes and achievements as well, and other progression systems like unlocking premium cards by you know, either like leveling a character if we have levels on heroes, or you know, just achieving the achievements. Maybe that's what unlocks the premium cards. Basically, this stuff is all up in the air. This is actually one of your KPIs, Benjamin. If you guys have ideas for progression systems, please give us ideas. We're looking for them right now. But yeah, very good question, very important. All we know is we'll have MMR, and we're exploring other options too.
Imaginary MDA says, are you putting money back into the game to psychologically prime people to spend more money on your game? Yes.
Be nice to us on Twitter too, or I'm adding loot boxes. Aaron Z had a cool suggestion for some variants of dynamic music. For example, he suggested in the buying phase, maybe you just have a beat, and then during combat, you turn on the bass riff, and when your health gets lower, there's shredding on guitar parts. Basically, dynamic increasing intensity depending on what happens in the game state. Definitely agree with you on this. Right now, we're looking into the right rules system for doing dynamic music. It's challenging because we have a lot of different things that we want from our monetization system and our game boards, and they kind of clash when it comes to dynamic music. For example, merchants are a really big part of the game, and in the final game we expect to have like dozens of them. And since these merchants are such a big part of the game, it'd be really cool if they had a sonic identity. Like if I entered a merchant, I could hear a little jingle that plays. You know, maybe even each merchant had their own song. That's probably out of scope for us. I don't think we can do that, but you know what I mean? Like different sound effects per merchant would be a really cool thing to have. Or when we're in the combat phase, having that music get more intense and more dramatic. You know, scaling it based on life totals, another way to do it. We're basically trying to figure out how can we achieve what we want from the monetization system while still making the music kind of match what's happening in the game at all times. But it's tough, you know? Like, if, let's say we have dozens of merchants and people spend like 3 seconds per merchant. Well, now giving them each a sonic identity is really difficult, because if I have a different song playing every 3 seconds, it's just gonna sound like shit. So it's really hard for us to figure out like the ways of doing dynamic music so it can like complement what's happening on screen, but not being like disruptive or sounding like a cacophony of songs that you know, just shouldn't work together. At the same time, we want the way that we implement things to be scalable. It's like a really easy solution would be to write everything in the same key and the same tempo, because then we can just like, you know, everything will fit together, every type of music. But it really restricts us in the kind of music and sounds that we can use moving forward. So we don't really want to be restrictive right now. We really are trying to build a scalable game as a service that we can continue to build on, even after we launch. We want to be making substantial improvements to this game, every single month, indefinitely. So if you guys have ideas for dynamic music, feel free to let us know more of these. I think these are all cool ideas, and this is definitely top of mind for us right now. Honestly, after posting that gameplay update, it was really cool to see not just how many of you commented, but how long and thought out your comments were. It really does mean a lot that we have such a big community of engaged people following the development of the project now. And if you guys keep having more thoughts or questions, just keep sending them to us, because we love making videos like this. We like being transparent about the process, and your questions force us to have an answer for the decisions that we make, which I think in the end is just gonna make a better product. So make sure you guys follow us, join the Discord for the Bazaar Discord, join the Bazaar Reddit, Twitter, your YouTube comments, wherever it is that you follow us. Just keep sending in questions. We'll keep answering. But yeah, this has been another update video, and we'll see you guys on another Friday with yet another update for the Bazaar.